Welcome to Ken Hance, the best storyteller in Texas. As always, you can find more on our website at hancepodcast.com and follow us on Instagram. It is at Best Storyteller. And we encourage you to go back through our library of episodes. There's some great content there for you to listen to. I know a lot of people like to listen while they're on a road trip. In fact, we heard from someone last week that was making a road trip from Lubbock down to Austin and listened the entire way.
Yep. And went back and listened to a few of the old ones.
Right, and really enjoyed it. Why don't you get us started with the saying of the day?
Saying of the day, Dean Smith, one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time, said that a mistake, what do you do with it? You recognize it, you admit it, you learn from it, and you forget it. And the most important thing is to forget it. And in basketball, he always said that if you have a player that can't let the thing go, they never will be a great player. They've got to be able to recognize it, learn from it, admit it, and most of all, forget it. Gets back to my old saying that I used at the first one time about mistakes and problems. Bury the dead and move on. And that's what you've got to do.
Ryan reminds me of something Tom Brady once said. He said, champions have very short memories.
Yeah.
I know you've got a story about how government tries to help and ends up messing things up sometimes.
This is a great story, great example. In India, they were having in certain areas too many cobras. The cobras were, everywhere. So they gave a bonus to people that would bring in a dead cobra. And the people got to thinking about it, and they could raise cobras pretty cheap and then kill them and take them in. And so the government figured out what they were doing. They said, we're not doing it anymore. And everybody turned out their cobras. So they wound up with more cobras than if they hadn't started the program. They meant well, but it didn't help in getting rid of the cobras.
Chancellor, I think we should discuss a little bit about the wildfires that are burning in West Texas.
It started a week ago today. And by the end of the week, by Friday, they had the biggest fire was over 1 million acres.
Wow.
It's the largest fire in the history of the state of Texas.
Give people some perspective. That's bigger than the state of Rhode Island.
Yeah, a lot, and larger, quite a bit larger than Rhode Island,
yeah.
Entire state. And the most of it was northeast of Amarillo, Pampa, Borger, going up to Canadian, and about the top 1/4 of the Texas Panhandle. They had about 400 to 500 structures, houses, barns, in Fritch. And Fritch is the home of Ron White, the comedian, that one time said that the police caught him in New York and he'd been drinking and having partying. And they told him he had the right to remain silent, but he didn't have the ability to remain silent. But it was his hometown. And most of the structures there were mobile homes. Mm-hmm. And the people that live in the mobile homes, once they pay them off, they don't insure them.
Right.
And so there's a lot of tragedy there. They're going to be trying to get some money and borrow some money so they can buy something else. Right. And you had Canadian, they had about 100 houses burned. And what happened with the ones that burned, the house next to them, still standing, didn't catch on fire. And because of the sparks and the way the wind was, some houses caught on fire, and some of the ones right next to them on both sides didn't catch on fire. Cattle, a lot of people, there was one estimate, 5,000 to 10,000 cattle. I talked to a guy last night, Johnny Trotter, who's in the Animal Health Commission, is from Hereford. He thought it'd be higher, probably 15,000. But, some people thought, well, what about those feedlots? All the feedlots have a fire break around them, and they watch it like a hawk. Mm-hmm. Some have their own fire engine, but they don't take any chances because you're spending, a lot of money on everything you do when you have 50,000 or 100 or 150,000 cattle in a feedlot at one location. They have to be prepared for that. But most of the cattle in the area that burned, they were, a mother cow and a calf operation. Mm-hmm. And what happens in those days, they'll run until they get to a fence, and then they can't get through the fence, and they'll just back up there and die, or they'll run and stop, and the calves get so much smoke in their eyes they get where they can't see, and the cows will continue to run, and those calves will start crying or mooing, but it's a crying sound, and the cows go back for them, and so both of them burn. Yeah. And but they'll have 5,000 to 15,000 head of cattle that went under, and some of the a friend of mine, Bill Kent out of Midland, bought the Boone Pickens Ranch, and when they had the last big fire, Boone did not rebuild fences because he didn't run cattle on his ranch, and he used it for hunting quail and birds, and so he hadn't built back the fences, and so a lot of people that bought parts of that ranch, or a big part of it, they did not build fences until this last year, so they went in to put some new fences, and that's $20,000 to $25,000, $30,000 a mile, and so that was they got stuck on rebuilding fences, so they'll have to go back and rebuild them. A lot of people putting in steel posts now, so they don't have to. And some of the cowboys that they'll carry wire cutters with them, that if some accident happens, so you can cut those fences and cattle can run and try to get out of the fire.
Do you know how much damage there was to the Boone Pickens Ranch?
No, the main lodge and the housing around the lodge and the chapel are all safe.
Okay. And
so that was the main thing. There were other barns and some housing, but it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful country, and it was just. I used to go up there at Boone. He had great paintings worth millions in the lodge, but they've got a fire truck, and they made sure that the fire didn't get close to the lodge.
Sounds like Boone Pickens was a fun guy to be around.
Oh, he was. He had a lot of great stories, and we had a lot of mutual friends, and I'd ask him, "You've seen R.H. Fulton lately?" And R.H. was a character, and he'd always have some new story about something R.H. did. And Boone was he attracted a lot of people. Boone would have been a good politician. He would have been electable because he had good people skills. Mm-hmm. And but he built that ranch, and it was after he had lost his first fortune, and when he built back, and got rich again. He got that ranch and really fixed it up, made it nice.
You know what I'll do, Chancellor, is I'll go back through our library of episodes and find the stories about R.H. Fulton, and I'll post the links to them on our Facebook page. That way people can go back and listen, because that guy, is he the one that said, if you don't pay your bills, you get to keep all the money?
Hance, I was state senator. Hance, remember this. If you don't pay your bills, you get to keep the money. Okay, that's profound. And he didn't have credit with anybody in Lubbock. He was what he'd do. He wouldn't pay. And if you were a lawyer, and he had used every lawyer in town because they wouldn't represent him anymore. He'd run up a bill, maybe $100,000 or something. Well, that's too high. I said, I'll give you 30. You'd bargain with him, and maybe you'd wind up. So you had to insulate that bill when you sent it out to, put some real numbers in there.
Didn't pay retail, did he?
No, he didn't. He paid wholesale, or going out of sale business, and he is very successful as a pipeliner. That's where he made his money, and he bought a bank and some other things. But as a pipeliner, he was. He was notorious. He had carried a whip with him, and he'd whip somebody if he caught him loafing.
Really?
He got sued, and one time a guy took the whip away from him and knocked out a couple of his teeth. And, that's just part of another day's work. I mean, he's tough. He's a tough guy.
R.H. still got family around that know these stories?
He does. His son was the first Red Raider.
Really?
Yeah, first the rider of the horse. And rode that in the Tech game against Auburn. Texas Tech played Auburn in 1954, and they beat Auburn. and he led the team out on the field with his horse.
That's a great moment in college sports when that happens.
Oh yeah,
That's a
that
cool thing.
in Southern Cal has a horse, and so does Florida State.
That's right. Yeah.
It's hard. You can't have a frog lead the team out. Somebody will step on the frog. You got to be careful.
It doesn't look not real intimidating.
The Longhorn, I still think back, it was a potential disaster. But that Longhorn, when they were playing the Sugar Bowl against Georgia,
Oh yeah.
made a move on that bulldog, and if he had hooked that bulldog and taken off running, running down there with that bulldog stuck on his arm, boy, that'd have been a disaster.
Oh, Pete had gone crazy.
And they really had to, kind of make sure they gave him a little more value, I guess, or something, and keep him happy. And it's the horse at Texas Tech this year he was nervous. They'd retired a horse that'd been doing it for like 10 or 15 years. And the horse this year, they had to not use him some games. He was, crowd just spooked him.
Yeah.
If a crowd is going to spook it, don't take him to a game where there's going to be 60,000 people yelling and screaming.
I was wondering if that horse was from the same bloodline.
I don't know.
I wonder.
I don't know.
Well, probably not if he got spooked. He
I
probably wasn't.
Find out. Yeah, one other thing, on fires, if there's a prairie fire will give you some time. And first thing you need to do is get out of there. Find out a direction that you can go. The Canadian the other day, they closed all the roads, going in, going out. There was just nowhere to go. And if you know it's coming by, you want to try to water your roof. Spray some water on your roof. And, get inside and that, have long sleeve shirt, and long breeches and gloves, the cap, and it'll be hot. The problem is it get real hot and they'll go outside. Well, then they don't have it's really hot out there, and so they need to evacuate. And the police were good about going out and getting people to get out and run to wherever they need to go. If you've got relatives in Amarillo, but they tell you to go toward Oklahoma City, go toward Oklahoma City. You can come back for the relatives at a later time. But the main thing is just being able to save your life. And that's been prairie fires. I had a lady, Mrs. Estes, in Dimmitt, talk about when she was teaching and that at a prairie school back in like 1905. And she'd have one of the 8th grade boys get up on top of a windmill and look and see where the fires, where they were headed. And so they'd know which way to run and what to do. But it's been going for a long time, and we'll have more. The cause comes about when you have a good spring or summer, there's a lot of rain, and then it just stops in October, and you don't get any additional rain. Well, that grass will grow knee-high, and then the least spark that comes by will set it off.
Last question on this, do you have any idea, as of this recording, how much of that fire has been contained?
Last night, it was 15%.
So I got some work to do.
Yeah. On Friday, on the big fire, it was only 3%.
Wow.
And they had a little let up, and that helped them. I think that also you have to look at if you leave the house, don't leave it locked. You're afraid somebody will steal something. That's the least of your worries.
Right.
If they get busy wanting to steal something, those conditions, they may burn up. So you want to, close all the doors but leave them unlocked. And you need to have a game plan, and that's you want to have a game plan so everyone in the house, everyone in the family knows what to do if they get separated, where they're going to meet. But most of all, get away. And it's a very tragic event. They've had a couple of lives lost. Skip Hollingsworth did a story on the last big fire in 2006. And I read that story. It was in Texas Monthly. And if by the time you got through the story, you felt like you knew personally those people that died and didn't make it. But there was close to 10, somewhere around the number 10 that died. And, one cowboy was going in to try to save some cattle and everything. It comes a point that you just got to save your own life and get out of there.
Right. You said when you left the basketball game last week, the smoke was unbelievable.
Tuesday night, I came out of the basketball game in Lubbock, and I felt like the fire was probably about a mile north of Lubbock. I mean, the smoke was unbelievable, and it was hard to see. It was like a thick fog, and the smell, and it's not good for you. And that's how far. It's over 150 to 175 miles away.
Wow.
If Mother Nature is acting up, don't get in a fight and expect to win. Mother Nature, you're going to lose, and so you have to be real careful.
A lot of brave people out there fighting that fire too.
I forgot to say this: the volunteer fire people. Well, that in a lot of towns they might have in Borger, they've got a few firemen, but they depend on the volunteer firemen. And the volunteer firemen, all of them got red lights on their pickup, and they can turn those lights on and get there pretty fast. And they're really good. And I always, when I had a ranch at Matador, Texas, I always contributed to the volunteer fire department's fund every year. I didn't want them to think that I wasn't supporting them. Well, that's old Hans's place on fire. I mean, they go to every fire and put it out, regardless whether you support them or not. But they don't need your support.
And they don't send you a bill. It's the best deal in town.
It is the best deal in town. A story came out about lawn gardens and about where's the best place to have a tiny house. I'd never thought about that.
Yeah.
And Vermont came in first. And Texas was 8th or 9th. They were up pretty high. And there were eight states that don't let you build a tiny house. They have some regulation. I don't know why, But tiny house, you can have 300 square feet. Some of them 290, some of them 400. And, you better, if you've got your wife or partner or somebody, you better be able to get along with them. They're not going to go anywhere. And most of them have a porch that, have a table outside because, that's the only other place you can go. And so you want to spend a little time outside. But tiny houses are, you save a lot of money. And some people have a tiny house as a second house. I want plenty of room. I don't want somebody bugging me, and so I'm not a tiny house guy.
It's amazing how people are so different in the ways that they choose to live. Some people want a tiny little house, some people want a big house, some people, apartments, condos. I can't imagine. I was just in Nashville, Tennessee, and right next to my hotel was this high-rise apartment building, and I looked at it and I just can't imagine living in a box in the sky.
Box in the sky. There are more people live downtown Austin than any city in America except New York City.
Is that right?
Yep. More live downtown Austin in the high rises we've got, and they're still building them.
They're about to
left and right.
Yeah, they're on schedule to finish the largest building in Texas in downtown Austin. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of that will be condos.
But you look at the number of restaurants and everything downtown. And I mean, it's huge, the number of people that live there. And New York City is the only one that has more.
Yeah. Not for me.
I saw a study that shows the leap year, the 29th, February 29th, that the odds of you being born on a leap year are 1 out of 1,460 something.
Really?
And the reason we have a leap year is we have a little additional time. And if we didn't have a leap year in 600 years, Christmas Day would be in July. And so the leap year is to compensate for the extra turns that the Earth is making. There's a deal came out that did a survey and ranked the 10 most watched final editions of a TV show, and MASH was number 1, and they had Cheers was number 2, The Fugitive, number 3, Seinfeld, number 4, and Friends, number 5. I was shocked that Dallas, J.R. Ewing and that they weren't, because everybody talked. I remember people talking about it, and this won't ever happen again. The ones that are ranked now, that's it, because there's so many cable channels, and back then you had 3 that you watched. And I think back to, I started going to OPEC meetings in 1987 and 88, and I was chairman of the Railroad Commission. And the Railroad Commission at that time, the price of oil went down to $6 a barrel. Texas was hurting, and the real estate market went down. And so if there's a group setting the price, I want to know who they are. If I were a carrot farmer and there was a group somewhere in the world that set the price of carrots, I want to know them. I'm going to go see them. And so I went to the OPEC meetings. And one year when I was there, they'd meet 3 times a year, but there was one time that I was there that Larry Hagman was in Vienna, Austria, where the OPEC headquarters is, and he was doing a show. And so I called and got through to him, told him who I was and everything, and he called me back. And so I said, I'd like to take you over to meet the OPEC ministers. I'm telling you, you'd have thought, I mean, they were like children on their first birthday. I mean, they loved it. And they all, they stood in line to get their picture made with him, and they wanted to, meet him. And the Vienna newspaper the next day had a picture of J.R. Ewing, Larry Hagman, and the OPEC ministers, and it said, and the headline said, J.R. meets OPEC, and that I'd see him at meetings, and they'd ask me, how's J.R. doing? Everything like I was real close to him or something. Yeah. And I just took him over there to the meeting, and I knew who it was.
Did he dress like J.R. when he came over?
He
did.
He had his boots on and his cowboy hat, and they loved it. And they wanted him to have his picture made with his cowboy hat on. Some of them did. And but they stood in line, and if I'd said we can only take 3 pictures, there'd have been a fight to see who's being the top 3. But it was great.
Old J.R. Ewing, what a character!
Yeah, J.R. meets 45. It was, you go back to that show and people say, "Wonder what old J.R. is going to do," and everybody follow it.
Invented the cliffhanger. Who shot J.R.?
Yeah,
they left us hanging.
And also they had people that figure out somebody in their, especially in little towns, they'd say, "Oh, so and so's kind of a J.R. Ewing." So you didn't want that reputation.
If you've ever rewatched Dallas, the TV show, what's amazing about that show? In every episode, J.R. is drinking.
Oh yeah,
and it doesn't matter where he is or what time of day it is, J.R. is pouring a drink or having a drink.
Yeah. And trying to figure out how to screw somebody out of money.
He was good at it.
Hey, J.R. and R.H. Would have been, they would have been buds.
Yeah.
Or they'd have been killing each other.
Right. They'd try to figure out how to screw one another.
Yeah. That's funny.
That's a great story. The leaders of the OPEC wanted to meet J.R.
Yeah, I asked him. I told him I was going to bring him. Yeah, bring him by. They wanted to get a picture made.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's funny.
There's a study came out about what you can wear to church. When I was growing up, I always wore a suit or coat and tie to church. And now most churches, they're very casual. But they had a list, Crocs. I think you wear Crocs, church, as casual as sweatpants, pajamas. I would recommend you do not wear pajamas to church. Yeah. I had a girl in one of my classes one time. I asked her, I said, "Are those your pajamas?" And she said, "No, they just look like them." Oh, okay, that's fine, just so they look like them. And they had one of the items in there, a bikini. Don't wear a bikini to church,
no.
Unless it's on the beach in early sunrise service. Shorts, I've seen people at church with shorts on. In a football jersey, jeans, ripped jeans, mini skirt, cowboy boots. Cowboy boots, people have been wearing those church for years. And flip-flops. the flip-flops, to go back to the group, and I forget who the president was. I think it may have been Bush, that one of the national teams won the national championship in volleyball or something, and they wore flip-flops to the White House, and that was a big story. What the hell were they doing wearing flip-flops to the White House?
The old boy that had the football jersey on, he was going right from church to watch
football. He's going to watch the game.
Right.
There was a lady, it was a preacher that was down at Waxahachie, and he said he knew what time the Cowboys kickoff was because there was a certain lady, and she'd back into her parking spot. So that if she come shooting out of there, she wanted to see those Cowboys play. And if it's 12 o'clock noon, he said she'd back in, and then if they left the invitation open a little long, she'd sneak out the back door and take off for the house to see the Cowboys play.
Hey, preacher's got to be a businessman too.
Yeah, you got to look and see what's happening.
Right.
A former professor at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, he gave $1 billion to that medical school. $1 billion. And the way he made his money, he worked for Warren Buffett and at Berkshire Hathaway and started investing when they first started. I'll look it up, if you had one share of stock, what it was worth then and what it'd be worth today. But he invested with the right people at the right time and just wrote it out, didn't cash in, and wound up had enough money that he could give $1 billion to a medical school, which tuition there was $59,000 a year, and now most of the students will go for free.
Is that in perpetuity now?
Yeah, that's in their endowment, and they'll have to pay. They have to pay out 4.5%, 5%. And so if they pay out on $1 billion, it'd be $50 million that they'd have to pay out each year, so they can take care of those students.
I'm curious as a person. Forgive my ignorance for this question, but not in that world. When a university receives a donation of that size, is it a surprise to them,
No.
or is it they're planning? Or
rare would it ever be a surprise.
Okay.
You've got to work for it. I always said that each visit's worth another zero.
So they knew that money was coming.
Yeah, they knew something was coming.
Yeah.
Anytime you're looking for something over $1 million, every once in a while you'll have somebody pass away. They gave you $100,000 or something like that. But most of the people are going to give $1 million or more. They'll talk to you because they'll want to know what you want to do with their money. Mm-hmm. And they'll have suggestions. I want my money to be able to do this, and do that, and give a scholarship. I told John Monford one time I'd give a presidential scholarship to anyone from Dimmitt that made 1,400 on the SAT. And he called me back and said, "We got to check it. Nobody from Dimmitt's ever made a 1,400."
Your money's safe.
So I said, "Well, maybe other counties, if they don't." And then after I got to Tech, there was a kid had a 1,450, and so he got the scholarship.
Do you recall when you were the chancellor what the biggest surprise was in donation? Off the top of your head.
Well, I think the biggest donation we had was from Paul Foster, who was a refinery business in El Paso. He's been very generous to Baylor, to University of Texas, and Texas Tech, and he gave us $50 million for the medical school in El Paso, and that's a huge gift.
Yeah,
it really set the medical school in a great position. They went out and recruited the top researchers in disease and what causes disease. That's the one I told you about. We had a reception honoring them and recruiting them, and a county commissioner asked him, "So what do y'all do?" And I told him, "Well, they research diseases." He patted them on the back and said, "You came to the right place. They don't have it in Juarez. We'll have it over here." So thank you. Appreciate your help.
That's funny.
Saying of the day is from Dean Smith, and he said, "What to do with a mistake, admit it, learn from it, and handle it and forget it. The most important part of it is forget it. Bury the dead and move on. Go on to the next event. Don't sit there and worry about that mistake."